Hey, Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. So, let me give you a quick bit of background here to explain where I'm coming from on this thing. So, growing up, I went to religious schools, actually. It was really a means for keeping me out of the public school system. That was what my mom's whole bag was. But anyway, I went to a Baptist school for 8 years and then finished it off with Catholic high school. They had two different ways of looking at things biblically. And in particular, things that were taken literally by the Baptists or metaphorically by the Catholic Church. I'm thinking in specific of the number 40 as it is used in the Bible. So, for example, when you hear about the Jews wandering for 40 years in the desert, or when you hear about Jesus being in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, things like that, the Baptists take that literally. Like, it was really 40 years on a calendar that the Jews were wandering in the desert. It was really 40 days on a calendar that Jesus was wandering in the desert and getting tempted and whatnot. But the Catholic Church looks at it differently. They actually say that that's sort of a metaphorical number. It's meant to imply that it's a long time and it's not necessarily 40 days or 40 years or whatever. Just that when you hear that number, you are to think that it's a significant amount of time and that the number 40 is always used in times of trials or tribulations or that sort of thing. So it has sort of a testing connotation to it, if you will. And as I've been revisiting The Last Jedi through the novelization by Jason Fry, the fact that there were at least 30 Star Destroyers that were following in the wake of the Supremacy chasing the last of the Resistance, and that there were also 30 transports that launched off of the Raddus trying to make planetfall on Crate, I thought to myself, you know what? The number 30 is not just a random number. I mean, nothing is random in Star Wars in general, but why did they come up with 30? And when you start thinking about that number a little bit more, you realize that it pops up a bit more often than you might expect. There is, of course, the most famous reference of all, which would be to the 30 rebel ships that attacked the Death Star in the original Star Wars. But that's not the only 30 reference. There are actually a couple more of them in The Empire Strikes Back and in Return of the Jedi. Specifically, in The Empire Strikes Back, there were 30 rebel transports also that tried to escape from Hoth. Those are the ones that, look, those like real big, long tube-shaped ones. And of course, there was a rebel transport toy by Kenner back in the day. I'm sure there are a lot of folks listening to this and watching this who might remember that very fondly. Anyway, there were 30 of those ships, and they are specifically a GR-75 medium transport. There were 30 of those that tried to escape from Hoth, and of course, not all of them actually made it. And as far as Return of the Jedi goes, well, there's another 30 there as well. It was 30 Star Destroyers that were at the Battle of Endor. And here's the thing about this whole 30 business. Thinking back to my Baptist/Catholic education, on the one hand, because we're all so very literal about canon and we all want to know exactly what was happening in the movies and in the books and in the comics and all this stuff, the number 30, we do take it as a very literal number. When we say there were 30 ships, there were 30 ships. There were a combination of X-Wings and Y-Wings. Only 2 X-Wings survived, only 1 Y-Wing survived, right? But it was 30, count them, 30 ships. And yet, when you encounter things like, 30 Star Destroyers over Endor, or 30 Star Destroyers at least following in the wake of the Supremacy in The Last Jedi, well, you start to wonder if the number 30 used there isn't meant in a more figurative or metaphorical sense. The idea being that it's just an overwhelming force that they have to face. Now, there isn't one that jumps out at me as far as The Force Awakens goes. And I went and looked to see if there was any record of how many X-Wings went to attack Starkiller Base, and it doesn't seem like it was anywhere near 30, unfortunately, for the Resistance. It might have gone a little bit better for them if they had a few more. And certainly it wasn't 30 that showed up at Takodana to rescue everybody there. The only thing that really tied in with The Force Awakens in 30 years is the fact that it's 30 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. That's when The Force Awakens takes place. So I think that's actually rather significant in its own right. And sure, they had to make it 30 years because you've got to age everybody and all this, but what is it, from 83 to 2013, that would be 30 years, and then 2015 when the movie came out, so 32. But 30 is again, significant number here. This is them saying, hey, we want you to pay attention, and it almost adds to the mythology of it to some degree for you to realize that they're using the number 30 in larger senses. And I'm sure that there are other places this exists in the Star Wars galaxy, in TV shows perhaps, or in the books or whatever. So I'm going to start paying attention to those, see if I can find more examples of it. The thing is that I went looking for them in the prequels, and I was rather shocked to have difficulty finding any 30 references in there. There were references to there being a significant number of those Trade Federation battleships in orbit over Naboo for the blockade. So in my head, I'd like to say, oh, maybe there were 30 of them, but there's no reported number anywhere. Nothing in Attack of the Clones. I was looking at, oh, maybe Anakin killed 30 Tusken Raiders, but no record of that. Anything with the big battle on Geonosis? No significant 30s kicking around in there or anything like that. And same with Revenge of the Sith. Like, there's just no numerical significance there in that regard. So I feel a little bummed about that. I was hoping that I would find something there, but no such luck. And not in Rogue One either, actually. There's no Battle of Scarif thing that says, oh, there were 30 rebel ships that went to that thing. No, actually, there were a lot more rebel ships that went to Scarif, and so doesn't hold water in that sense. But it held water in the original trilogy, and I found that really fascinating. And the fact that it seems to have been referenced not once, but now twice, actually 3 times across 2 movies with the sequel set of movies, well, that, I think, might be significant and might not necessarily be accidental. And that, believe it or not, is going to do it for the video version of the podcast. And there's going to be a little bit more over on the audio version at sw7x7.com/iTunes or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. In the meantime, though, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.